It's clear that as humans, we always have some underlying motivation behind every action we take. And behind every motivation lies another, deeper motivation. But what happens if we just keep digging into these motivation layers? At some point, we would have to hit a fundamental motivation that doesn't require a reason for its existence, right? The model I want to share in this video tries to be exactly that. The bottom of our behavioral layers beyond which any further explanation is, at best, pure speculation. And for some context, this model is also the basis upon which this entire series about purpose and fulfillment is built. All of the following videos will live under the assumption that this model describes, in fact, how humans fundamentally operate. But of course, with a topic like this, I feel obligated to put out a disclaimer first. Nothing of what I say upholds scientific standards. It reflects my own experience, so if your experience is different, then it's perfectly fine if you disagree with what I say. In fact, I would even encourage you to think for yourself whether you agree or disagree. Because thinking it through yourself is a much better way to learn than just to listen to someone. But now, with that out of the way, let's dive into the model. Okay, so labeling the terms. The two most important ones for this model are survival and purpose, which I call the main objectives of human beings. So what I mean by survival is the general survival of humankind, not just your own survival as a human being, although this plays arguably a bigger role than the survival of other people. But I think it's important to broaden the definition of survival here as far as possible, because the objectives should not be something that's really achievable, but more point to a general direction. Now, the other objective for me is to find purpose. And as with survival, again, this definition has to be broadened as far as possible. You could define purpose as following a religion or as having some set of morality rules, or just pursuing something that you find purposeful yourself without anyone else sharing that opinion. So whatever is meaningful to you is something that can bring you purpose. Okay, and now let's talk about the drivers. So pain and pleasure is the driver for survival, and emptiness and fulfillment the driver for purpose. So what do the drivers do? Well, as the name suggests, they drive you towards action. If you're somehow lacking in survival in something, then you feel pain. And the pain drives you to turn it into pleasure by some action. And the same goes for emptiness and fulfillment whenever you lack purpose. So from which actions then can our drivers go from the negative to the positive? Well, exactly those actions are what we call our needs. It is those actions that we feel pain and emptiness when we don't act upon them, and pleasure and fulfillment if we do. And notice that this definition really goes from the drivers first, then to the needs. What moves our drivers is what we define as needs, and not the other way around. This means that it's possible to not know which action needs doing in order to alleviate pain or emptiness. So the process of maturing can also be seen as just figuring out which needs you have to meet. Okay, but not every need is the same, because they live in one of 5 different categories. And I didn't make those categories up, they come from Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. But I figured that the lower the category on that pyramid, the more was it geared towards survival, and the higher it was, the more was it geared toward purpose. So the physiological needs include every action we need to do in order to keep us alive. This means drinking, sleeping, eating, breathing, etc. Love and belonging is the need to feel connected with other people. This could mean an intimate relationship with another person, but it also means having friends and feeling connected to a community in general. Now, esteem includes every need that makes us feel worthy. This could mean self-esteem or respect from other people or social status. I'd even say that seeking power falls under that category too. And finally, self-actualization. And for the purposes of this series, I think that this category is the most important one. Because for me, it wasn't really clear how I could fulfill my need for self-actualization. Not until I dug deep into this feeling and thought a lot about it and experimented a lot too. But now I figured that the most representative need for self-actualization is our need to give up our life to some greater goal, to a main quest or a life's task that you can sacrifice things for. Because without a task in life, it's really unclear what you should do with it. And people have always wondered about this. I think it's the reason why religion even started in the first place. Because we wanted to have an answer to the question, why am I doing all of this? Okay, I think it's pretty obvious that not every need contributes the same amount to survival or purpose. And this is why we have the proportions here on the side. They tell us how much a need is split between the two objectives, and thus is driven by the two different drivers. So let's take our need to sleep, for example. It is a physiological one. This means that it's mostly made up of pain and pleasure. So when we don't sleep, we feel pain. But not only that, we also have the information that sleeping is the action we need to do in order to alleviate that pain. So what does the default mean here? Well, our brain tries to be in homeostasis at all times. This means that it always tries to make the current condition the default one. For example, if you don't sleep enough, maybe just for 5 or 6 hours a night, then your brain will make this the default state, which means that you won't feel tired anymore. Although this may have been great for survival back in the caveman days, where sometimes we just weren't physically able to sleep more than 5 or 6 hours a night. Nowadays, it's a bit of a problem because it's still unhealthy. So tiredness and wakefulness are really just two directions, and the state you're currently in is probably the default. Now, let's take a look at another need. And our need to belong falls in the category of love and belonging. So again, the feeling of loneliness is really a special mix of 50% pain, 50% emptiness, together with the information that connecting with other people is the way to get rid of that and transform it into pleasure and fulfillment. And again, the default state is the state you're probably in right now, which is the average of the last 2 months, let's say. And finally, our need to have a life's quest. As I said, self-actualization. So confusion and aimlessness is really just, again, as with the other needs, a mixture of a tiny bit of pain with a lot of emptiness, together with the information that working towards a greater goal is the way to convert this feeling into mostly fulfillment and a tiny bit of pleasure. And then confusion gets transformed into clarity and aimlessness into focus. Okay, now that I've explained this entire model, I want to talk a bit about how this model can help us understand reality a bit better. So I think we can all agree that nowadays finding purpose is much more difficult than surviving. And I think that this has created the expectation that finding purpose is supposed to be easy too. But I think this is where we go wrong, because humans have evolved in an environment where surviving was the difficult thing and purpose, well, it wasn't easier than now, but it certainly wasn't more difficult. But nowadays, survival is mostly taken care of. We can theoretically have as many children as we want, and it's pretty sure that they will all survive, and it's sure that we will survive too. And yeah, there's still the general health issue that is still a concern for a lot of people, but I think it's nothing compared to the struggle of survival we had millennia ago. Purpose, however, was difficult and is still as difficult today as it has ever been. And ancient Greek philosophers have spent lifetimes philosophizing over this exact topic. So this is really a quest that can last for decades. And because there are different life philosophies, this means that after so many years, they don't all agree. So it's a complicated topic and it hasn't become easier. And now on top of that, there's two problems that make it even worse in my opinion. First, we have developed a bunch of methods to exploit our driver of pain and pleasure to make us feel pleasure even though we haven't done anything that's really great for survival. Or pain even though we haven't made anything bad for it. We have fast food and porn that exploits our physiological needs. We have a lot of political outrage on social media, which I think exploits our need for safety because we perceive other people who disagree as threatening to the stability of our society. In love and belonging, we have social media, which gives us a huge spike of pleasure. But then we also have a bunch of TV shows, series and movies that basically make us addicted to the screen, which in my opinion isn't really helpful too. And not to mention all of the drugs that don't fall under any category, but just make us feel pleasure in the entire system without having done or seen anything at all. So why is this a problem? Well, as we'll discuss later in this video, all of the spikes of quick pleasure make it more difficult for us to concentrate on a bigger pursuit, because we're getting used to our actions giving us immediate pleasure. But pursuing something for a lifetime is the exact opposite of that. If we want fulfillment, this often comes at the cost of pleasure. So getting addicted to pleasure is not really a great way to find fulfillment, especially if finding fulfillment is difficult in the first place. And the second problem I see in our society is our schooling system. And I don't want to bash on our system and everything is bad, etc. That's not the point. But I think there could be a lot of improvements for just tiny changes in our system. So the main problem I have with our schooling system is that it doesn't teach us how to find that life task and how to work for it. In fact, it does the exact opposite. Whatever your life task is after school, I'm pretty sure that school has made you do the opposite thing. The problem really starts at the classroom itself. It's designed for pupils to sit all day long, and this is not a natural thing to do. As you may have noticed, I'm currently standing, and this is great. I'm pretty sure you've heard of studies that say, like, sitting is the new smoking. And this is true. I had plenty of mobility issues in my hip. I had to stop with competitive sport in part because I was sitting all day and not moving and not recovering. The second problem comes at what we teach, because everyone learns the same stuff at the same pace of the entire class in preparation for the same average working style. But reality is different. Not everyone is great at the same things. So why can't everyone focus on their strength and work from there? And why does everyone have to learn at the same pace and not at their own pace? I mean, when I'm making videos now, I learn at my pace and it's perfect because it's always the right pace. And finally, there's all the standardized tests. And I think they pose an issue because it teaches everyone to compete with each other, where the reality really functions differently in that we work best as teams. And although there may be group projects in between the years, I've never seen an exam where a group of 10 people had to submit a really ambitious project they chose themselves. It lets you try out different positions in a group and test your strength, which is what you have to do if you want to find a life's pursuit. For me, this would be a much better preparation of the real world than what the school system is doing right now. So, combining everything I've said, purpose is difficult, whereas survival is easy, which creates the expectation that purpose somehow should be easy too. But it's not. Then it's very easy to get addicted to a bunch of stuff, which destroys our ability to pursue difficult things. And third, we aren't taught how to pursue fulfillment in the first place, even though it's arguably the most important skill in our life nowadays. This leaves us with many people, especially young people in roughly my age, who are lacking purpose in a way that has never been seen before. And I really don't know how we can fix this, because I don't really know where the sweet spot is between giving the responsibility to the people to make the best choice for themselves or to regulate what's good for people on a political level. However, on an individual basis, what you and me can do is to give effort ourselves. We can individually decide to do whatever is best for us. So, if you want to see what I'm doing in order to pursue what I think is best for me, then I hope I see you in the next video where I give an overview about the model I made for actually fulfilling our needs, which I call the model for making progress. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them in the comments. Otherwise, I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!